We are live.
All right, thank you. Ready? I'd like to call this meeting of the Elko County School District Board of Trustees to order. Please join us in a pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Item 1.03, approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Been moved by Luke, seconded by Brian. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the agenda is approved. Moving on to item 1.04, input from the public. This is a period devoted to comments by the general public, if any, and discussion of those comments. In the interest of privacy and due process, the public is requested to not raise personnel issues except in a legally noticed closed personnel session of the board. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. No action may be taken upon a matter raised. This is non-action item. We have some individuals that have signed with their speaker cards. The first one is Rochelle Hoover. Good evening.
So, from the state of just some excerpts. Response. There are many tweets and stories that are being shared comparing images in response to BLM protests and today's terrorist activity. You could use these images to ask students to compare what they think is happening and why it is happening. Hint, racism, white supremacy, white rage. Push back against neutrality. Remember, it will do more harm to teach both sides. This is not about both sides. This is about justice. There is nothing inherently virtuous about being neither here nor there. Buried in this false equivalency of ideas, what you might call the good people on both sides phenomenon. Establish dialogue norms. What are dialogue norms? Well, according to this slide, classroom dialogue norms is not up to those from marginalized groups to be nice, civil, or calm in the face of dehumanization or discussions about the oppression. Educate others about their experiences, speak for their particular marginalized group, debate or prove the existence of oppression or marginalization, make others feel comfortable, give others opinions, equal weight to their experiences. To expect those individuals to do so is to engage in continued oppression and dehumanization. Then it goes on to say, learn and practice interrupter phrases. I don't actually think the classroom should be safe for all viewpoints. I am not going to debate another person's right to exist. I am not going to debate another person's humanity. Some of the interrupter phrases for when children are speaking and we don't like what they have to say are, please consider the impact of what you are saying. That's not okay with me. What you just said is harmful. Hold on, I need to process what you just said. There's more, but that's just a couple. And my personal favorite is, remember, this is not a surprise. White teachers do not be the teachers or people who are surprised by what is happening. Do not let your students be the students or people who are surprised by what is happening. Contextualize this within a historical lens of whiteness, white supremacy, and settler colonialism. Oh, and the 60-second text. For teachers of the youngest learners, this is a new great 60-second text from the wonderful woke kindergarten. And it says tonight's 60-second text is called Spot the Difference. If you're new here, 60-second texts are big concepts for little people in 60 seconds. This one particular encourages kids to, well, I'm going to finish this, encourages kids to interrogate differences between how Black Lives Matter protesters and Trump supporters are treated by the police.
Okay, thank you.
This was an email from the state of
Okay, your
Nevada
time is up.
superintendent. Sent to all
Next
of our
person,
schools.
Misty Atkins, please.
It's 7 pages long.
These are from the links within that 7-page email. Everyone is different. They're screenshots taken from the links within to email from the superintendent of the Nevada Department of Education, who is appointed by the governor. My name is Misty Atkins. Like Rochelle said, I'm going to be talking on the same thing. I don't think this is here yet, but it is coming here as it is shown in the email that I have from Jehone Ebert, the superintendent of the Nevada Department of Education, which was sent out on January 7th. The email was sent out on the events that happened at our Capitol on January 6th. I am going to read excerpts from this email due to time constraints. I will start at the Beyond the Stoplight section. Resources for teachers on the days after the attack on the US Capitol. This is not a conversation that needs to or should be relegated to only social studies and English language arts classrooms, meaning that they wanted to have it or want to have it across all classes and courses, and as you will see, all ages, as Rochelle already pointed out from kindergarten. It says, please note, 1, if you're going to talk about it, do so with intention, care, and explicit commitment to justice and equity. There's that word again, same results, no matter the effort. 2, do not center images of Black suffering and pain as a way to make this a teachable moment. White teachers, this means you/us. Then special notes. Note to Black teachers, I hope that you have the time to take space for yourselves as you support your students. I hope that you have white colleagues who are talking about this too, so you don't have to be the only one. I hope you can find co-conspirators in your school or here within the Nevada Department of Education. Definition of a co-conspirator, one who conspires, a plotter, a person who is engaged in a conspiracy with others or another. Note to white teachers of white students, you have to talk about what is happening. This is on us. Every time and all the time. We cannot pretend to be surprised anymore. We have to do what we said we were going to do all summer when we were reading those anti-racist books and completing those anti-racism checklists. Our white students are not too young to learn about this. Note to white teachers of students of color, especially Black students. Please make sure you know what you are doing before you do it. Please make sure you know how to support your Black students and other students of color if you try to have these conversations. Other subjects in this section, analyzing images. What do they attempt to obscure? Hint, racism. Comparing a police response. Ask students to compare what they think is happening and why it is happening. Hint, racism, white supremacy, white rage. Pushback against neutrality. Remember that it will do more harm to teach both sides. This is not about both sides. This is about justice. There's nothing virtuous about finding common ground. Learn and practice interrupter phrasers. I don't actually think the classroom
Misty,
should be safe
thank
for
you.
all viewpoints.
Thank you.
Mr. Cooney, could I just ask one question?
I don't.
Yes.
Misty, sorry, just one question. So, because I got confused between both. Was this in our district or in another district?
This went out to all educators from the Nevada Department of Education.
But that's not, it didn't generate from our district.
It did not come, no, it came out from the
Okay.
superintendent that was appointed by the governor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next speaker, Sharon Labarts.
Hi, Sharon Labarts. I want to talk about the bond issue tonight. First, I oppose the bond issue on tonight's agenda, 50 cents for $100 of assets. Assets valued is not acceptable when our schools are already receiving an average of $11,364 per student, and Nevada schools rank 45 in the nation. We have no school in Elko County that ranks in the top 50 schools in Nevada. We do have, however, one school that ranks 385th out of 386 schools. I have reviewed the financial reports and I do not believe funding is an issue. I did send to Mr. Cooney a request by email today to get further information on the budget. And I really don't see as that it's a financial issue going forward. I know it is for building schools and stuff, and maybe we should look at that, but this bond deal is not the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Christy Armbruster.
Thank you, Dr. Christy Armbruster, for the record, retired pediatrician. Regarding agenda item 3.01, that is, quote, declaring the necessity of incurring a bonded indebtedness on behalf of the district for $150 million for the, quote, acquisition, construction, improvement, and equipping of school facilities, end quote, also called the, quote, project, end quote. We have a few questions that we want so that we can understand the purpose of these funds. Number one, what is the emergency that necessitates going into debt that may take 21 years to pay back? With the projected inflation, this level of debt may become a heavy burden for the citizens in Elko. Question two, what is the, quote, project, end quote, that is requiring these bonds? The language in the bill is quite generic, but it seems clear that money is specifically for building construction rather than curriculum or other items. Number three, how many bonds will this bill allow? Specifically, would the $150 million be the maximum for the whole series? Or is it going to be cumulative? So looking at the financial report of the school district from June 2020, we were in significant debt, about $90 million. Compare that to the years from 2008 to 2014, where we had an excess of funds of $125 million. We were still positive for 3 years, but then in 2018, we ended up with a deficit larger than $100 million, and we have not come back up from what I could see. I don't know this year's report yet. This trend is concerning because the school board is now asking for $150 million more, even though the school district is in major debt from what we can see. Spring Creek High School has several new buildings, but there are many schools that still hold classes in trailers. There are reports of students not having books for critical subjects, such as math. Is that due to budgetary constraints? I don't know. The purpose of the Elko County School District is to educate children here. We want that purpose to be in the forefront of our minds as we make crucial decisions. Taxing the community for more buildings, but negating more important items such as protecting the teachers from liability, ensuring there are plenty of school supplies, upgrading existing classrooms will not improve Nevada's standards in the educational ranking. We should not hold a special election for the bond proposal because the community already voted no for the pay-as-you-go question. Quote, if the assessed value of property in the district decreases, approval of the question could require a property tax rate within the district greater than the property tax rate which has been projected by the district as needed to repay the bonds, end quote. So we would love to hear the answer to these questions before you vote on item 3.01. Thank you so much.
All right, Janine Hansen.
Good evening. My name is Janine Hansen. I'm the state president of Nevada Families for Freedom. I've been a resident, live in Elko for 16 years. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm very concerned about the proposed bond issue. We know what happens when you put a bond issue on the ballot. We have those who are in favor of it utilizing the schools in order to promote it. And we're very concerned about additional bonding. One of the things we are looking at now is the uncertainty of the times, the problems which will result from additional bonded indebtedness. Of course, this mortgages each one of our homes, because if we don't pay, then what happens? Our homes can be taken by the government because we have not been able to pay our property taxes. So we are responsible for this. And we are very concerned with when we look at inflation right now. I went to the store the other day and the price of the bacon I usually buy had gone up $2. With the way the Federal Reserve is expanding the money supply by endlessly printing money, inflation is going to be a huge issue in all of our communities. And as this happens, the value of other things goes down. The cost of things goes up and the values go down. Inflation is a tax. I don't know if you're aware of that. As they print money and the price of everything goes up, you're paying the price of inflation. So if we are to have more debt in Elko County, we will be jeopardizing our future. I don't know if you're familiar with the Institute for Policy Innovation, but they recently did a report that shows that 63% of everything a person spends is now spent for taxes, federal, state, local, and hidden taxes, 63%. That's more than you spend on food, housing, education, healthcare, entertainment, anything else. The vast majority of all our money goes to taxes. We cannot afford additional bonded indebtedness. And it's very important for you to consider the fact that with the circumstances in the world right now, after we've come out of COVID, where people have lost their homes, their businesses, their jobs, that this is a very uncertain time. And it's not a good time to put an issue on the ballot like this. And if you do, well, then we will have to oppose it, because this is a serious matter in terms of us being able to keep our homes. We appreciate your serious consideration of this. I thought that Dr. Armbruster's questions were exceptional, and I would ask you to answer those before you make a decision on this. We are very worried about any additional bonded indebtedness in Elko County, especially in the circumstances we face in our nation right now. Thank you.
Right. I don't have any other speaker sheet. Is there anyone that wants to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item. Item 2, there is not a report this evening. Item 3, action items 3.01. Receipt, review, possible approval of a resolution designated the 2021 Elko County School District election resolution, declaring the necessity of incurring a bonded indebtedness on behalf of the district, determining the maximum principal amount of general obligation bonds to be issued shall be 150 million, calling a special election to be held on Tuesday, November 16th, 2021. Does somebody have their mic on?
Yeah, President Cooney, this is Marty Johnson. Can you hear me?
I can. It sounds like you weren't muted. We've got some gravelly in the background here.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm at a volleyball tournament.
Oh, okay.
So, and I don't know if Ryan Henry was able to join. He was still waiting for his Zoom invite.
Ryan's on the screen.
Oh, okay, excellent.
Yes, Marty. Marty, I'm here as well.
All right, maybe let me
Okay.
make just a couple of initial comments. I heard some of the questions, but was having a tough time staying connected. And then I'll turn it over to Ryan to talk about the resolution. So just to remind everybody, you know, what we've been going through for these last few months. You know, we've talked about tax rates, and the tax rate that the district levies for pay-as-you-go is currently 75 cents. That tax rate ends after next year. And so what we are proposing to do is replace that 75-cent rate with a 50-cent rate that would go to repay bonds. We expect to be able to issue up to $150 million of bonds. Those will be issued over some period of time. If we haven't issued them within 6 years, then that authorization expires. And it's a total of $150 million of bonds that can be issued. You know, so we're planning to do this in phases as the project needs arise. Based on some articles I've seen in the newspaper, it sounds as though there are other governments out there that would be looking to take the rate that the school district is giving up. And as we've talked about at many board meetings, those entities can raise that tax rate without going to the voters. So it's entirely possible that if your tax rate right now as a homeowner is $3.64, which is the cap, that after this is done, it is still going to be at $3.64. The Debt Management Commission did approve this on Friday to allow us to go forward. We met the criteria that are set forth in statute for them to approve. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Ryan to talk a little bit about the resolution and what it does. And I will go on mute unless there's any questions for me.
Thank you, Marty. Ryan?
Good evening, everyone. For the record, this is Ryan Henry from Sherman and Howard. The resolution that you have before you is the next step in this process to put a question before the voters this November, December. What the resolution essentially does is it determines the maximum principal amount of bonds that may be issued. As Marty stated, the maximum total amount is $150 million of bonds. The resolution also calls a special election on November 16th, 2021, or such other date as determined by the county clerk. Should the Board of Trustees choose to move forward tonight, it really falls within the discretion of the county clerk to determine the actual date of the election based on the process that she goes through in accordance with the election laws and then consultation with the Secretary of State. So my communication with the county clerk has been about 3 possible dates. The dates that she's looking at are November 16th, November 30th, and December 14th. The other thing that this resolution does is it contains the sample ballot information that must be included in accordance with state law, which is also submitted to the county clerk so that she can start the process of putting together the sample ballots and also putting together the committees that prepare the arguments for and against. As Marty stated, on Friday, June 25th, the Debt Management Commission approved this proposal. And should the board move forward tonight, this resolution would be sent to the county clerk, and then it would set the wheels in motion for an election this November or December. I was having a little tough time hearing earlier as well, but one of the questions was about use of these bond proceeds. So in accordance with state law, NRS 387.335 specifies what general obligation bond proceeds must be used for. And assuming that the board goes forward tonight and the voters approve the question this fall, each time that the school district issues bonds, the bond resolution would come back to this board, which would contain more specifics regarding the projects, but the projects themselves are within the discretion of the Board of Trustees. And then the bond proceeds are spent with, consistently with the school district's capital improvement plan. So at this preliminary step of the process, it'd be very odd to include specifics for the project. And for that reason, that's why this resolution just says improving, constructing, equipping, and constructing school facilities in accordance with 387.335, because once bonds are issued, we come back to the board every time and include more specific project descriptions. With that, I'll stop and ask if anyone has questions, and I'd be happy to try to address them. Thank you.
Yes, Luke.
Good evening, Ryan. Thank you for meeting us. So my questions are going to be more to clarify for clarification and transparency purposes. So first of all, I'm sure that we have that wish list of projects available at some point. The list we went. So if we could make, yeah, okay. So if we could make that initial wish list so that we're realizing that the 150 million is not something we're going to spend in a year. It's something we're spending over several years. It's to support the whole district. The second question I would have, and I just want you to confirm, even if we get voted against, that 50 cents will go to the county or the city or other rural cities. The actual resident in this county will not have a cost savings. It's just that piece of the pie is distributed elsewhere, not for the schools, correct?
So I want to answer that carefully, and Marty addressed it carefully as well. But your first comment, that is correct. The capital improvement plan that includes the wish list, which far exceeds this amount of bond proceeds, that was approved by this board on June 8th and can be made available to anyone in the public who'd like to look at that specific list of all the projects that the district's considering over the next 10 or so years. To your second point, based on articles and our understanding what's been in the paper, there is a possibility that other overlapping entities would raise their unlevied operating rate to take up the 50 cents should this question not get approved. And if that were to occur, just as you described, rather than taxes going down, it would just be a reallocation of that 50 cents to another local government. That is correct.
My final question that you sort of touched in your first presentation is this 150 million, no matter what we want to do with it, we have to use it for capital improvement. We can't use it for mental health. We can't use it for curricular. We can't use it for anything else but capital improvement, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And that is the NRS you mentioned.
Yep, under the statute, this can only be used for capital projects of the school district. It cannot be used for operating purposes such as salaries. And because there'll be tax exempt bond proceeds under the federal tax code as well, it has to be used for capital expenditures.
And I did lie, I have one more. The emergency election is due to the fact that the pay-as-you-go failed last year. And so it is expiring. So as of right now, the school district will have to use general funds, which will not be able to support the size of our district moving forward for the 10, 15 next years. So we need some kind of funding to improve and maintain our current establishments.
Yes, that is correct. So on June 8th, this board unanimously determined that an emergency exists and necessary to hold a special election. And the board made that determination in accordance with the requirements of state law. And that determination was conclusive in the absence of fraud or abuse of discretion. And it was also conclusive unless it was challenged within 15 days. So that 15 days passed prior to us going to the Debt Management Commission. On June 25th, the Debt Management Commission approved the proposal. And now we're back before you tonight for the next step in the process to move forward with sending this proposal to the county clerk, which is what this resolution does.
Okay. And one last thing, I just thought about, is in any way this levying people's houses against the district? No. This is the district's responsibility because we have the possibility of $350 million in debt from the size of our district, correct?
So it's the district's responsibility to levy property taxes to repay those bonds. Now, property taxes are paid by homeowners. So should property taxes not be paid, the county would go through its normal process for the collection of property taxes. But the property taxes utilized to repay those bonds are no different than the other property taxes levied by overlapping entities in Elko County for the various purposes of the overlapping entities. So these would be treated the same as all other property taxes that were paid in the past, and the same as property taxes that were levied to repay the pay-as-you-go as well.
Thank you, Ryan.
Good. Other questions?
Just that capital improvement plan, just an example, that Performing Arts Building has been on that capital improvement plan for how many years?
Right at 50 years.
Yeah.
In one position or another. And for the public's information, the thing that this board has done is we held several workshops, went through, looked at all the possibilities, what the needs were, basically having to look into a crystal ball, because who knows what things are going to be needed, what our outlooks might look like. But going through, we identified projects. Those have been, had some numbers tied to each one of those particular projects as far as estimates, as far as construction. We looked at the possibilities of doing a pay-as-you-go back to the voters, requesting less than the 75 cents, which the existing pay-as-you-go is at a 75-cent levy. Looking at that at a 50-cent or lower. We went through, we looked at other means of going through and being able to do mechanical upgrades. As we looked at all of our buildings in this district, some of the newest buildings, with the exception of like Liberty Peak Elementary and the new elementary school out in Wendover. The thing that we were finding is those schools that were built utilizing pay-as-you-go are 20 years old right now. The Spring Creek campus is roughly 20 years old. Elko High campus, the majority of those buildings there are 60 years old. And we've got a couple of them that's over 100 years old. So we have an aging plant, if you would. And the thing that we need to do is, as Luke mentioned, with the general fund and funding changing at the state level, coming down to the school districts, the future is questionable. But the one thing that we do know is that going with just the maintenance section, it would deteriorate the ending fund balance of our general fund down by about 40%. And yet that will not be sustainable over any length of time. So this board looked at the options. Marty and Ryan that were involved all the way through. We met the requirements to declare the emergency. We took it to the debt management board last Friday. They approved it to move on. And this is this final step to get this to the county clerk. And at that point, put it on for a ballot and allow the voters to vote on this again. That kind of summarizes where we've been. All those meetings have been open, and the district and the board has tried to be as transparent as we could possibly be. And with the discussions and coming up with this plan, I will tell you, there was a lot of hours that we spent sitting here in this room going through looking at those particular options. So other board members, comments? Robert.
Ryan, I just want to just ask you, all the other, I mean, for the majority of the other districts in the state use bond issues, correct?
For the record, Ryan Henry from Sherman and Howard. Yes, that is correct. All other districts in the state that are as big or bigger than Elko County School District utilize bonds to finance their capital needs. That's right.
Okay, and then the plus to having a bond is if we need something now at a school, we can pull a bond now instead of wait 10 years for the pay-as-you-go to build up to do that project, correct?
Yeah, that's kind of leaning more on the financial side. So I think if we still have the district's municipal advisor, Marty Johnson, on the line, maybe Marty can address the benefits of bonds versus pay-as-you-go from a timing perspective.
Yes, for the record, Marty Johnson. And the answer is yes. If we have bonding authority and there is a project that needs to be done, we have the ability to issue bonds, again, as long as it's within that 6-year window, that the voters give us to issue that $150 million. We do not have to wait for those property taxes to accrue to pay cash for a project like we would with pay-as-you-go.
Okay, and I just want to make sure, I know Luke touched on it earlier, but if it will go to another entity if it doesn't go to the school district, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing. Taxes for the citizens are not going to go down. They're going to stay the same. It's just going to be divided elsewhere. So.
Yep. Ira?
If we could get Marty, because he would do a better job of explaining it than I would, the cost of construction inflation versus what the interest rate will be on this bond, and how pay-as-you-go is not going to keep up. And a low interest rate on a bond makes more sense than trying to keep up with capital improvement projects with the cost of construction inflation.
Okay, did you hear that, Marty?
Yes, I did. And I'll
Okay.
give it a shot, and Casey might need to jump in as well. And so, from what I understand from Casey, construction inflation has been running, as high as 10% plus in these last couple of years. And interest rates right now, in fact, there was a school district in the state that sold bonds this morning, sold 20-year bonds for a 2% interest rate, which is substantially lower than where construction inflation has been over the last couple of years. We have planned in the numbers that we've put together that interest rates will go up over the next couple of years. But as long as interest rates remain low, 2% is a very, very attractive rate to get.
Okay. Other questions? Candace? No?
Jim,
Brian?
I just had a question. This is probably not for Ryan or Marty. This is probably for Central. What hypothetical reallocations might there be then in the general fund if we didn't pass a bond issue or some funding for capital improvement projects? Because I would assume the majority of our budget money goes towards salaries.
85, 80.
So just even to cover maintenance projects, you're reallocating that money. And I mean, looking down the road, then you're looking at larger class sizes, reduced supply budgets, et cetera. Yeah,
For sure.
Okay.
And that wouldn't.
right, exactly.
One point that I'd like to reiterate that was brought up right here, with the pay-as-you-go, this community, the county has done really well through the years with not having any interest on the pay-as-you-go. Unfortunately, that idea was not projected to the voters this year. And obviously, we're looking at a year that has never been like this particular year. The thing that we had to do with pay-as-you-go that I found very difficult as a board member, that is, if we had a project, and let's say that project was $18 million, which would be a relatively small project in looking at this whole thing, we would have to wait until we had a balance that came in. It came in at about 15 million. The 75 cents brought in about $15 million a year. You had to wait until you had, as the name infers, pay as you go. We had to have the money in the bank before, and the monies are held by the county treasurer in a trust account there, and the district draws from that trust account. So the county treasurer oversees all of the money that comes in through the collection of taxes. But we had to wait on some of these projects for multiple years before we were able to pull the trigger on the project and move forward. So, and we looked at all of those different things, and of the options that are out there, as Marty and Ryan have mentioned, other school districts are going through, and this is the standard way in which they take care of capital improvement. Elko has been the only county, I believe, the only school district that utilized pay-as-you-go. And so we were looking at if we could reduce the numbers from 75 cents to 50 cents to perhaps even help other entities. The county had requested some. And anyway, what we came up with was kind of a medium, take it in the middle, and the 50 cents is where we settled. So.
President Cooney, too, what we can reiterate, for example, take Liberty Peak, which I believe was close to 45 million to build. That's going to take 3 years to put the money aside because you can't start a project before having enough money with the pay-as-you-go, as President Cooney was saying. The only problem with that is that if the inflation rises faster, so for example, now all of a sudden it's not 45 million anymore, it's closer to 48, 49, you still don't have enough money, so you're just pushing back. The appeal with pay-as-you-go is that if you have the funds in every year, like we were saying with the 75 cents, for example, was approximately $50 million a year, you could use that money straight away. So if you had a smaller project, you can turn around and use it that year. It's for the bigger projects where bonds are a necessity, because that way you can do them straight away. For example, somebody mentioned the trailers. On our project list, we do have some projects where we're transferring some of those trailers in some of the schools in the county into new buildings or a gym, semi gyms with classrooms on top, for example, to save some money. What the purpose of first going to a bond is to open the door in 2-3 years, I believe, I forget the exact timeline, so that we have a rollover. So then we can do both. We can do pay as you go and bond, so that if the district needs a smaller project, we can go without using interest. And if the district needs a bigger project, we can just pull a bond so that we don't have to worry about inflation. That is the complication with this tax situation. I understand that it seems like a lot of money, but for a district our size, I don't know what the equity is on all our buildings, but on district that size, it's really not huge, because we don't know what in 10 years we're going to have necessity for schools, depending on how much our students need. So for example, if you want a new school in Montello, that takes money. If you want to move out of trailers, that takes money as well. If we need to maintain, for example, West Wendover had to redo their mechanical and their air, we have to maintain that for the safety and security of our children. If we just vote against this because you don't trust us, that is an issue, because we need to try to build your trust. However, the only people who are going to be hurt by this are the children. Realistically, it's just the schools. The money can't go anywhere else. It's very regulated. And that's just something that I want to be transparent on. There is a project list, like I said, I don't know where it went, but it is available to everybody. And that is just a guideline. That's how we managed to project that we need 150 million. We didn't just come out with that number. We had teams tell us that these are what these projects are going to cost, and we had a wish list. We did dwindle it down. We tried to make it as coherent as possible, as to not waste money, because as we all know, as you pointed out, it's the country's not doing so well right now, so we're not going to be wasteful. However, we do need infrastructure to teach our children and to make sure that they're safe. Some schools have leaky roofs. Who pays for that $3 million to change a roof? If we don't have the funds to it, we can't just continue pulling from the general funds. That would be an issue for other necessities for the district. So I hope that makes a little more sense. It's more complicated than that. That's as much as I understand it to be. But like I say, there are several moving parts, and we have to trust the system in the sense that we will be going to a rollover, which is a dual system, if you will, where we have bonds and pay as you go. And that will probably go back. And as Ryan said, or Marty said, the only difference between us and most other government entities is that we have to go to voters for approval. Other entities don't have to. They can take the 50 cents and just take it. So the 50 cents that you think you'd be saving on the district would just go to the county or the city. And I believe out of the 75, the city moved in for 10 or 12 cents or whatever they requested, and the county moved in for 15.
Yeah.
It's taking
Taking
50 cents
from
from it. You're already paying it.
It's from what the tax rate, the 364.
And that's
Is
where I
a
think
set tax rate.
this information is, we're not asking for more money. It's gonna go somewhere else. It's gonna go somewhere else if
Yeah.
the school district doesn't get it. And we're not saying we're asking for 150 million right now. We may need a project for 40 million that we can put out a bond for, or we're not saying, hey, we need 150 million right now, give us 150 million, right?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I need to try to talk. I just wonder have you explored a lot of the 50 or 60 million dollars that the federal government has for schools, some of these projects?
I think that we've looked into in previous years, that as with any of that money, you've got some strings attached. I'm sure you're well aware of that, I don't think that this board or that we want to find ourselves in that situation. We have looked into some of the stimulus money, and as far as that goes, we haven't explored any further into that. I think there was, Casey, there was some funding that became available for air, okay. Right, but that was an approximate number of, what was that? Right, and to go through and to upgrade the ventilation systems in one of the schools, yeah. So there's some funds out there, and I believe the district will look into and see if we qualify for as much of that as possible. But again, taking a kind of a cautious approach to that. Okay? Yep.
Changes to every system that you use to fund anything. The advantage of pay-as-you-go is when you build something, it's paid for. It's obvious. The disadvantage is because of the inflationary offset, you design a facility that you want to build. Rarely in the years I've been here do you ever end up with that facility, and it's because of inflation. So almost all projects that are designed to turn out a certain way end up being pared back. One really small but good example is we had to build a bathroom facility at Warrior Field on the Elko High School campus. And we did an estimate and had it designed. And I believe that the estimate came in at like $125,000 for a brick and mortar bathroom facility. Well, it got delayed. And 3 years later, they came back to do the exact same project. And we ended up building it at a cost of 3 times the original estimate. And it was a tin building instead of a brick and mortar. So what bonding enables you to do is come closer to building the project at the standard that was first intended.
Candace?
In your, if you clarified that it's not being added to the taxes that we pay, you could clarify that somewhere. I think it'd probably go over a lot better. And if that was clarified in pay as you go initially, I know a lot of other people probably.
Yeah, and it became really apparent during the debt management meeting that this group sitting before you has a significant push and definite responsibility to make those items as known to all the taxpayers. Because it's, with the amount of time that we put into this, it definitely, as far as options, it is the best option in my mind that we can go with. So.
And we're gonna ask for your guys' help to spread the word too, because I mean, we can only reach so many people, but to help educate,
Okay.
Yeah. Just to kind of help clarify that, the state sets our taxes that we can collect in the county is capped at $3.64. And that's $3.64 on every $100 of assessed property value. And right now the school district gets 75 cents of that for capital improvements.
Instead of the 3. Like you're only
364. No, that's
sense of the 364 that you could possibly take.
The 364 is everyone. That's overlapping entities. That's the county,
okay.
that's your
That's
city, that's everyone. That's the cap for everybody. So all of this money, and Marty can clarify this, but all of this money comes together. It's not just the school district, here's yours. And, when you have that 364 cap, that includes everybody. So, the question that was asked is, what is the emergency here? Well, right now, everyone in the county is paying 75 cents. And that goes to capital improvement projects for the school district. With pay as you go failing on the ballot in November, that will no longer exist come 2022. And so then the school district will have no more money coming in, not just for building facilities, but for maintaining. And if you've listened to, the age of some of our facilities, we're about to hopefully open a new school out in Montello. It's not a new school to reopen an old school. We have new facilities that we have built. We have old facilities to maintain. KC has been to every campus in the district and talked with their administration to determine their capital improvement needs, as well as, any maintenance or anything else. So the list with the capital improvement project, which is available to everyone, you can get on board docs, you can find it. If you have a hard time finding that, please reach out to the district or to a board member and we can help you find that. It's available to everyone. We discuss all of these issues in an open meeting. So all of those projects are available. So the emergency is when that money stops, that 75 cents in 2022, the school district no longer has money to maintain our facilities, let alone build any facilities. And again, just to clarify, that 75 cents is already on everyone's tax bill. We are now asking for 50 cents. We are just restructuring how that will take place. So there's actually a reduction of 25 cents. Now, also to clarify, the school district is the only one who has to go to the taxpayers to get tax money. The county can take that money, or the cities, and they don't even have to go to the taxpayers to take part of that money. So that 25 cents that would be savings for the taxpayer, I'm going to put savings in quote, the county or the cities can go ahead and take that and you will not see savings. If the county decides we don't want to do this bond issue and we're not going to give the school district 50 cents to do this bond issue, then the county and the cities can take the whole 75 cents and the taxpayers will potentially never see any savings, and we will have no way to maintain or build facilities in our county. So I hope that helps you understand the emergency that is what we're declaring here, because we need to be able to take care of our facilities. And it's been touched on by several board members that if money is not available in this format or some other format that is specifically for our capital improvements and our project list, that has to come out of the general fund. And so if you're concerned about teacher salaries, about classroom materials, about curriculum, everything, if you start pulling money out of the general fund, then what are we going to have in the general fund to take care of all those things? So this money is specifically to take care of our facilities, maintain them, build new ones, do all those projects that need to be done simply because we have facilities. One of the things that I've heard a lot of people talk about is their concern that we still have all these trailers in the district and they are aging. Casey has talked about that several times in meetings, that most, if not all, Casey, of our trailers are aged out or close to.
Currently have 90 trailers in the district, not all of them are used for classrooms, but the average age is 28.2 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Typically designed to go 15, 20 years.
So you can see just in the trailers alone, which of course most people are like, hey, let's get rid of the trailers. Fantastic, let's get rid of the trailers, but we do have to have funding to do that. And one of the things on the capital improvement plan is to get rid of those trailers and to improve our facilities. Some of our schools don't have a gym or they have a very small shared space. And so on that plan, Casey has designed a building that can have the gym as well as additional classrooms, depending on the needs of the individual facilities. And so instead of having those trailers sitting on those campuses, we would now have brick and mortar classrooms. We would have better gym and shared facilities there for our schools to be able to use, our students to be able to have activities inside, be able to have family events at the schools, et cetera. But there's a lot that goes into this. It's not just, hey, we want $150 million. We've spent hours and hours, and honestly, since about November, we've been talking about this and mulling it over and looking at options. And I'm glad that a lot of you came with these questions, because these were a lot of the same questions we had to begin with. What's the best process? How do we make this work? How can we make sure that we still are able to maintain and build facilities that we need? And after hours and hours of research and talking with Ryan and Marty and Casey, putting in hours and hours, at every facility in our district of 10,000 students where we are spread out in one of the largest counties in the United States. This is what we have come up with that looks like the best plan to be able to build and maintain our facilities and to be able to move forward as a district and not just crumble into, disrepair in more ways than one. So I hope that helps answer your questions. And I think I went through all three of your questions and some others that came along. But like I say, a lot of us on this board had many of these same questions. So we appreciate you coming and asking, and that's your job. Come and ask us questions, because we certainly have either done the research or we will continue to do research if there's something new that we hadn't thought of. But I will tell you, it's been months that we've been looking at all of this. And so we would appreciate you supporting this bond issue, because it's the way that we're going to be able to take care of our schools.
Okay.
I move to approve the 2021 Elko County School District election resolution declaring the necessity of incurring a bonded indebtedness on behalf of the district. Determining the maximum principal amount of general obligation bonds to be issued shall be 150 million. Calling a special election to be held on Tuesday, November 16th of 2021, or such other date in calendar year 2021 as determined by the county clerk, for submission of the question of issuing district general obligation bonds and providing the effective date.
Second.
All right, been moved by Luke, seconded by Robert to approve the 2021 Elko County School District election resolution as stated. Is there any discussion from the board members?
I just wanted to make a comment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I understand that there has been a lot of misinformation that's been put out there. I think that's why the pay-as-you-go actually fell. There was a lot of misinformation put out in our county. And my sincere hope is that the parents will help us educate the people on this issue, and that the city, the county, and the school board can all come together for the sake of our students. Because truly, if we don't have a way to fund our capital improvement projects, all of you will be very, very upset with what happens with the quality of education, because we won't have any. All our money will be siphoned off and have to be used to at least make our buildings safe for our children. So that's just the comment I want to make. I hope our community comes together. We are very happy to answer questions. So if people have questions, send them to us.
Okay. Other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item 3.02, receipt, review, and possible approval of superintendent's resignation agreement for possible action.
I move to approve.
All right. It's moved by Luke, seconded by Ira to approve the resignation agreement. Is there any discussion? Everyone's had an opportunity to look this over, and we've had legal go through that. All right, if there's no other comments, all those in favor of accepting the resignation agreement signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the resignation agreement is accepted. Moving on. Item 3.03, discussion and possible approval of a request to waive attorney-client privilege as to 2 legal opinion memos for possible action. All right.
Does the motion have to carry both, or couldn't we just do one or the other, or does it automatically do both?
I think that
It's asking actually out of curiosity.
it was my understanding that it was as one item. All right, and a little bit of background on this. Board members had requested information regarding the penalties and the funding impact that going against the governor's directives, what ramifications could be involved with that. And so there's the two legal opinions have been brought forward, and that's what we're waiving the attorney-client privilege so that those can be made public. What's the pleasure of the board?
I move that the board approve the waiver of the attorney-client privilege as to the legal memos dated June 1st, 2021 and June 7th, 2021, and that the district director of communications make the opinions available to the public.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Candace, seconded by Brian. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye. And we will notify the Director of Communications to get this information out.
Tony,
Yes.
could we, since we waive the attorney-client privilege on those, can we at least tonight read the question and the answer from our attorneys?
Okay.
Reading the entirety of the document, I think, put us here till
Okay.
rather late, so.
Let's see here. Get this. All right. You want to read one and I'll read one?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, this is the memo dated June 1st. What are the this is the question. What are the potential consequences to both the district and individual trustees of a board resolution to not adhere to the state mask mandate? Answer. Several adverse consequences are detailed below. There's an analysis and there are multiple points. So this memo will be available for the public shortly. That's the first one.
Okay.
Jim, I've got the second one up. I
You
can
got
read
the
it
second
also.
one? Okay.
All right, this one
Go
is the
for it.
memo dated June 7th. Question, if the board decides that students are not required to wear masks in school in violation of the state's mask mandate, would it violate the Nevada Constitution's education funding mandate for the state to attempt to enforce the mask mandate by withdrawing education funding from the district? And the answer is yes. And again, there's an analysis and many points that you can enjoy at your leisure shortly.
Okay. That satisfy?
Thank you.
Okay, very good. So that motion. Are we ready? We already voted.
Yeah,
I
we
thought
voted.
that,
That
I
was
thought
just
that
a-
we had, and
That was just a little.
We just went back.
I'm sorry, I got,
We're on 3.4.
oh. Okay. Technology, I'm going to catch up here. Okay. All right, we're on item 3.04, discussion and possible action on transition plan for possible action. All right, this particular item ties in with the resignation agreement. The transition as we go, we currently do not have, we've accepted the resignation of the superintendent, so we do not have a superintendent. As per policy, policy CG, in the event, I'll read the policy to you. Policy CG says, in the event the superintendent is to be absent from the district, an administrator will be designated to serve as acting superintendent in his or her absence. Furthermore, in the event the superintendent is disabled or otherwise unavailable to serve, the board will assign the superintendent's duties as appropriate. With the policy that we currently have, the normal succession, if we do not have a superintendent, is it would go to the next highest position that we have. That is the deputy superintendent, Mr. Smith. And the way the policy is written, I would ask this board for approval to allow Mike Smith to become the interim superintendent to manage the business of the school district on the day-to-day basis. And I would ask the board's approval to move Mike to the interim superintendent.
So moved.
Second.
Ira? It was moved by Brian, seconded by Ira to approve the succession to move Mike Smith to interim superintendent. Any discussion?
I just wanted, so what are the scopes expected? What's the expectation during the summer months? Because, so we have,
Obviously, Luke, the thing that we're looking at is at this particular time, we've got hiring of principals, the continuation of trying to hire and hiring of the staff and the tasks that need to be done right there. And because there's no way that we could get any application process started and completed, and we don't have another meeting until the 27th of July. This is something we need to take care of right now.
no, I understand. My worry is, are we asking too much from Mike because he has his regular duties? And so it's like, say, we're missing other key components in central as well.
Right, and those key components by the approval of this particular motion will allow Mike and the rest of central to go through to fill those positions that
I just don't want to
need
drag
to
him
be.
out totally. before the school
Exactly,
starts.
exactly. I agree with that. So any other questions or discussion?
So what's the plan moving forward, though? I mean, what's the next step to start a search, or, I mean, what are we?
That, I'm gonna have that address that. We'll do this first and then we'll address that. Okay?
Well, I think an important question is, Mr. Smith, would you be interested in doing this? You don't, this is not a, are you going to make the contract? But, there's kind of the joke of, whoever isn't here, you vote them into the position and give them the responsibility. Well, you're here. So I feel it'd be appropriate that we ask if you would at least entertain this, if the board is, willing to support this motion.
I would entertain assisting as best as I can in solving the problems that face the board and the community together, and hopefully can do that in a way in which people come to a consensus on what's best for the staff and students of the Elko County School District.
I think that was a yes answer.
Sounded
Yeah.
like it.
All right. Any other questions? All those in favor of approving to move Mike Smith to interim superintendent, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Chair votes aye. And congratulations, Mr. Smith. All right. And following up, there are a couple of things. I've been working at trying to put together a timeline for applications and the process to go through and make the job announcement. And looking at that, the timelines, this is, how should I say this politely? This time of year is probably the most difficult time to begin a search for superintendents for a lot of people, including teachers. So I think I do not see this process being something that ends or is completed within 30 days. I don't see it being 60, even 90 days. So we're going to be involved in this particular thing in the process to select a new superintendent could be as long as up to a year. So I have a copy of the application, description, job description, description of the district that we have. I have requested, we've gone through this process this last year, and we're getting copies of the exact verbiage, go through, make editorial changes to that. And my hope was to get that posted as a job tomorrow, but I don't believe, because we haven't received the paperwork that I'd requested, we'll be posting that as soon as we're in possession of that, and we go through and edit it to make sure it's got everything in there that we need.
Just for
Yes.
informational purposes, last time, how long did it take you from start to finish? Was it February to August? Was it March?
How long?
February to May.
February to May?
Okay, yeah. It
So
it was a time consuming, yeah,
Just to get, and that was a better time of year, obviously.
yes.
Just to clarify then, the job announcement will go up as soon as we
We've
get
got it.
that document.
Yep. And the intent is to advertise, first of all, on the district's website for any local individuals, and expand that to Western United States, and include some of the Midwestern, because we've hired a lot of teachers from kind of that Midwestern belt, and they're here. So we thought that would be an appropriate approach rather than doing a national search. Okay,
Jim, do we need a motion for that?
well,
Oh, yeah. I don't
just a
think so.
direct
Just to be able to
directing
post
to
it or
get
directive?
these, yeah, if the board would like to direct me to ensure that we've got that, and I'll work with Cassie to,
So direct you.
okay.
Are
I've
we gonna
been,
have a cutoff date for the applications?
yes, I was in just the basic time frame. If we were to advertise starting tomorrow, looking at that first one, looking at a 30-day, I don't think that's reasonable, but I would take any suggestions from board members as to the length of time.
Would it? Said this back 9 years.
Yeah,
You looking, would it be better to wait? In September, post this?
Well, I think that's just gonna be worse. Time-wise.
Or is there not?
yeah, I think we will face the same obstacles right there.
We entertain the idea of reaching out.
We have,
I've seen some of the interviews.
yeah. That discussion hasn't taken place.
I emailed the board with the documents that you were looking for the original search of 2020.
You might have, when did you send that? Okay. We were waiting for the gal in Reno or Carson City to forward that information. So, thank you. Um,
And that was my only question was Dr. Oliver's involved.
as it stands right now, I had a discussion with her on Saturday, and she said she would assist us any way that we would request. Okay?
I just have
All
a
right.
comment there, Mr. Zeisler. We did pay last time, to have all those, the brochures and everything drawn up. And my understanding, so somebody correct me if I'm wrong, is since we did pay for that, we can just utilize that
Yeah.
material again. Since it's only been a year, I would say it's pretty recent.
fresh.
Pretty fresh. So my suggestion would be we just go with, what we have already paid for, get the applications in and go from there, because, then we will know in 30 days whether or not we're going to have a pool to even look at.
Okay, yeah. I think we'll play this by ear as soon as we get this. We'll take a look at the calendar, and I'll talk with Mr. Smith, and we'll figure out how those timelines can fit in and take care of that. All right? So I've been directed. Correct? Okay. One other request that I have from the board, and that is with regards to the transition, going through as Mike starts to take on these roles and we're there. I would ask approval from this board to screen went blank. Anyway, ask approval of this board to have Teresa as the clerk and me as the board president to act in to oversee and to monitor the process as we're getting started here to ensure we've got a smooth transition. I know I've been anticipating what we're going to have to do. And so I would ask if it's all right with the board that Teresa and I will be the personnel looking at and assisting with this process rather than having a larger group or the entire board, which runs into the open meeting law problems that we could exist. So if I could get that approval, we can move on with that.
I move to approve your request.
All right. Moved by Luke, seconded by Robert, to approve the request for Teresa and I to be, I guess, like a liaison to move this thing forward. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the request is granted. Item 5. Yep. Item 5.01, items from board members, non-action item.
A few things. First of all, I'd like to ask the public to be patient with us in this process. Obviously, it's not something we take lightly. It's something that's going to take a minute to do. And on the flip side, I also ask the public to be patient with whoever we hire. Change comes slow. So it takes a lot for somebody to come in a district this size that is spread out so wide that it does take a minute for somebody to actually, especially if they're not necessarily local, to embrace our community and to embrace each individual community to kind of figure out what's going on. That being said, on a different note, I would like to see on the agenda on the next meeting, if possible, and it gives us about 3 to 4 weeks to figure it out as board members. I would like to come up with board and district goals and superintendent goals, so that moving forward, a teacher knows where the district is headed, and us as a board, we know where it's headed. So I remember when I was interviewing for this position, Brian actually asked me, what do I do as a trustee? And I had luckily researched it. And apart from setting guidelines, I don't micromanage. I don't go into classrooms and tell teachers what to do. I set a goal, and I expect that way I can hold accountable the superintendent to reach that goal, and I have to give her the tools or him the tools to reach that goal. That is my job as a trustee, as far as I understand. More so than not, you can correct me. So I think it's important for us to actually have goals for the district and a set of expectations and goals for the future superintendent or current staff at Central. It's easier to know where we're headed as a district and community, and that might give more clarity as well on what's going on.
Okay.
And I don't know if we want to do a workshop before a meeting.
One thing, these things are falling together
Everything
quite
else
well.
falls together.
Yeah. The situation when I talked with Deb Oliver, who is the executive director for the School Boards Association, she puts on classes, she puts on workshops to go through, to work on goal setting, to go through talking about board governance and, you know, the do's and the don'ts as far as being a good board member. And at the 71 Ranch, which Ira was so gracious to sponsor or invite and host the executive committee out there, I did have the opportunity to talk with Deb Oliver. And one of my questions to her was, how does her schedule look? And she said the week of the 19th of July. And it would probably be, I think, either early in the week or late. She was going to let me know for sure. That she said she thought that we'd be able to schedule that and then have a retreat and go through, because I think the one thing that I've really wanted to get done this year is to establish some good solid goals and move forward and strategies on how to improve that. So thank you for bringing that up during the public or the board member comments. Other items?
Yeah. After that debt management commission meeting, the article in the Free Press kind of focused on what it focused on is not what we're focusing on.
Right.
And we've got a communications director. I would like to see him put an article in the paper about what we're focused on with this election coming up and that capital improvement project list, and maybe, you know, list that in order. What that article emphasis was on was way down that capital improvement.
Right.
list. Since we have a communications director, it'd be to kind of, while that article's still fresh in everybody's minds, to
Right.
put an article in the paper to what direction we're.
It's
we're
also,
emphasizing.
yes. It's my intention that tomorrow that a letter that explains where we're at as of tonight's board action and get that presented to all of our employees, and also a public letter to go through and explain where we're at right now. So
And that meeting, the transparency came up a lot. Maybe we should make that capital improvement project list more transparent.
Or easier
Yeah.
to find instead of
Easier
having
to
to go
find.
through board
Yeah.
docs. Maybe.
Make sure it's in order of where we're putting our emphasis. And because that article in the paper was not
yeah,
the direction we want to go. I didn't think.
exactly. Thank you. Others?
Yes.
I had a couple of things,
Go ahead,
Mr.
Janice.
Chairman. One, did we get a response to our letter from the governor?
As of right now, I haven't, Cassie's saying no.
They haven't received it yet. Okay, thank you.
We haven't received the certified. Okay,
Okay,
okay.
all right. Thank you for that update. And then I just want to, just as a reminder, for that next agenda, on the 27th, can we have a non-action item just to discuss where, especially now that we've,
261.
yeah, AB 261, the mask mandate, critical race theory vaccine, that whole package of things, just so that we can have a agenda item to discuss those in case we do get a response from the governor, and how the board wants to go forward, if at all.
Okay. We can set that up, I believe. Between Cassie and I. Okay. Teresa.
Well, I am just,
Yeah,
I think we would be,
excuse me.
oh, go ahead, Jim. You done?
Go ahead.
I think we would be remiss whether you agreed with the position of our superintendent who just resigned or not. I think we would be remiss to not thank her for her time in Elko County School District. She hopped into the middle of a fire in a pandemic. And I think, coming from the board, I know the work she did. I know what she did here at Central. I know what she tried to do in the middle of unbeatable, just crazy odds. There was no way she could win no matter what she did. And I want to go on public record and just say, I appreciate the work she did for Elko County. There are so many positive things she did, and I do not want that to be overshadowed by the pandemic and the negative atmosphere that has prevailed during COVID. She did a lot of great work for Elko County, and I want to thank her for her time.
Yes, definitely. Dr. Robinson has set in motion a number of programs and projects that will definitely have some significant impacts on student achievement. And I too want to thank her because she's done a fine job with moving this district from full virtual with the direction from this board to move as fast as we could possibly move and still be without violating the law. And we had all of our kids back in person, full time by the end of the school year, which a whole bunch of the school districts in this state cannot say that. They stayed in hybrid or even in full virtual. So I thank her for doing that. I know she was probably uncomfortable sometimes with the push that our board had, but she did a very good job, and thank her again. Okay. Other comments?
I just want to say thank you to everybody to come talk, come speak at these meetings. It takes a lot to actually get up there and talk. I was there once, and that's why I ran for the seat, just because I wanted to be a voice for the people. So it's not no political deal. It's not, I wanted to be a voice for District 2 and for all the other districts. So I'm always reachable.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Moving on. We don't have any accounts payable. Closing of the meeting. Input from the public. This is a period devoted to the comments by the general public. If any, in discussion of these comments, in the interest of privacy and due process, the public is requested to not raise personnel issues except in a legally noticed closed personnel session of the board. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. No action may be taken upon the matter. Non-action item. Is there anyone that would like to speak?
Mr. President and members of the board, my name is Lee Hoffman. Once again, I wasn't planning on getting up here to speak, but listening to the whole meeting tonight, I have one comment and one question or request. My first comment is, as a citizen, I fully support the action you took tonight regarding the bond. I do understand as I think many people know, but you did a pretty good job of clarifying it tonight, that you need some form of revenue for capital and maintenance. And with the failure of the previous pay-as-you-go, you don't have anything there if this bond doesn't pass. As a individual citizen, if there's anything I could do to help you support the bond issue, I am ready to do that.
Thank you.
The question is maybe a little more difficult. I sat here and listened to zero discussion regarding the agreement of resignation. And I know that this is maybe partially personnel issue that you can't openly discuss. But I know also that salaries of public officials are all public information. And the one thing that wasn't stated there is whether there is any financial implication to the school district as a result of that letter of resignation. And I think you would be well advised to make that particular piece of information public, because I know that that has been a question that has been raised by certainly others. And I guess what I'm just to be very clear is whether there or not there was a buyout involved in that. So
No,
thank
I
you.
believe that this action becomes public information. So this information, I had mentioned to Mr. Mullins that after the action takes place, the terms of the resignation agreement would become public information. Okay?
Would it be found on the next agenda? Or where would we find that information?
Or docs, I believe.
Under.
Yeah,
This meeting
that's
or-
This meeting,
going to go under the board docs.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, board docs and possibly the free press that was requested it. So, yeah. Christie.
Dr. Armbruster, thank you. Just wanted to clarify, I appreciate you answering the 3 questions, but as you did that, I had one other question. And I don't know how your budget works, so I'm just trying to clarify. 2014, we had a surplus of money. 2018, we're negative 100 million. And I don't know where we are this year, but how does that,
When you mentioned that earlier, or the question was brought up.
that wasn't a question, but that was just part of the financial arrangement of how the board works or how the school district runs. Because I was looking at the report, the financial report, and there's a picture, a graph that shows, I can show it to you. Here, the net position. And that's on the financial reports. I was just looking at money and seeing how it all works. And so right now, as of last year, you're negative almost maybe 90,000. I don't know how this relates to the capital improvement budget. See, that's what I'm trying to clarify.
Right,
I'm looking
right.
at
That number confused me with what you were talking about. The amount, there wasn't any debt that was incurred with any of that pay-as-you-go. It was tax money was brought in, and once we had enough money, they did the project. So it wasn't, we weren't borrowing against any of that. So that I'd have to
Okay, 'cause I
defer any questions specific to that to our
Okay.
finance department.
Okay, because we just want
Okay.
to make sure that we have a balanced budget,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
with the school district, especially like you said, pay as you go, it's paid off. So why are we negative? I don't know enough. It's 144 pages and I just caught
Yeah,
that graph.
yeah.
So that clarification would be great. Thank you.
Okay, we'll see if we can get some answers on that. Misty?
You mentioned Deb Oliver quite a bit. Who is Deb Oliver and what role does Deb Oliver play?
As I told the board, Deb Oliver is the executive director for the Nevada Association of School Boards. And she has been there in that position 2 years, 3 years. Yeah. And so she is the one that does the book work and lobbying, coordinates with the lobbyists that,
Training for.
training for school boards.
we're
She does
required by law to have training the first and
Yeah.
third year of our terms. She facilitates that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so she doesn't have anything to do with the hiring process of the superintendent? Okay, it was kind of talked about.
No,
intermingled
the
in there, so I wasn't
situation
sure.
was the board, when we looked for a superintendent, we utilized her services to go through and handle the search.
So you did use her for the search the last time that you hired a superintendent when you hired Michelle Robinson?
Yes.
Are you planning on using her for the same purposes again?
Not, the only thing that we're looking at right now is the paperwork that she is currently, that you has sent a copy of.
I sent you 2 emails. The first email was the graphic, and then the second email was the application.
Okay.
And Teresa, I forgot to include you in the first one, so I sent you a separate one that you're not included in the group.
Okay.
Now, you mentioned the bonds for capital projects, but also in between there, it was also mentioned that it would be for maintenance costs, but maintenance in the way that I understood it would be like day-to-day running operations. Is that what I'm understanding, that it would go for that also?
No, maintenance in the sense, resurfacing.
For the-
parking lot.
okay. But it would, it's, you guys
Mechanical
have enough
upgrades.
income to not need those bonds outside of, like, you can run day-to-day on the money that you have and that you get,
For the general fund.
and you can use that money is sustaining. Okay, so it's,
But it depends on the, like when we had the roof leak,
Yeah.
that's
the
kind of-
cush, basically,
Yeah, that's
The
a big
cushion.
maintenance problem.
right?
Because the roof had to get replaced, so.
Okay. Are you going to, go ahead.
On years with legislations, for example, we got back from the state, the numbers back from the state very late. So that's where we have trouble projecting what our budget's going to be. That's why last meeting or 2 meetings ago, we had a readjustment of the budget.
Yeah, the augmentation of the budget. So,
Right.
That we do
That's
that.
completely separate from the
Yeah.
capital improvement.
yeah.
This is all really new to me, so I'm trying to understand. I'm sorry if I ask stupid questions, but it helps it sink into my brain better.
One thing I'd like to point out as well with capital improvement, just for transparency, because I know there has been some discussion in the past. We have to go from NRS with the lowest bidder. So sadly enough, if the lowest bidder is out of Utah, we have to use the
Oh,
Lowest
It does
bidder,
not matter
lowest
who it is.
responsive.
lowest, yeah, responsibility.
Lowest responsive bidder.
so, okay,
That where
Anyway,
our hands are tied,
yeah.
if we want to or not, we have to.
okay. So you do have to go with the
Oh.
lowest bidder, no matter where they're from.
That's NRS
Yep.
state.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
I didn't ask that, but that does help. Thank you.
thank you. Anybody else? Janine?
Sorry to delay your meeting. Janine Hansen, it's a pleasure to be here. On the documents that were on your board, it mentions under the description of anticipated financial effect of the bond, if the assessed value of property in the district decreases, approval of the question could require a property tax rate within the district greater than the property tax rate, which has been projected by the district as needed to repay the bonds. Now, when you're talking about being at the property tax cap of 364, and that you're going to take 50 cents of that, and then you anticipate that the county and the city may fill in the rest of that cap, then that doesn't give you any place to go if the property tax, if this occurs, which you've stated in here under the anticipated financial effect, essentially, if the property decreases. Now, we know that nationally, and I'm not sure what it is for Elko County because I haven't checked it, that the prices of homes is greatly inflated at the moment. And we know what happened after 2007, that it had an extreme decrease. And I'm always at the legislature for the 4 months that they meet. And I was there when they discussed what to do because the property tax rates were very high, especially in Las Vegas. And then people were losing their homes because of after 2007, what happened. Now, that could happen again very easily because we are at the top of the market. So this is something that I continue to oppose the bond issue because of the circumstances that we face, not just in Elko County, but nationally. And I want to make it perfectly clear that this is an increase in the bonded indebtedness of the individual person who owns a home. And so that is one of my greatest concerns. I just wanted to put that on the record. And then according to the state law, for when you have something on the ballot, and it's in the documents which you've put out, you have committees which will serve to write the information in favor of the bond issue and to write it against. So is it the county clerk that chooses those people to be on those committees, or do you know?
I'm unsure of that, whether the county clerk has handled that in the past. I think that we have the position for passing the bond, that we have some language in the document that we approve that goes to the county clerk. So,
However,
and
there's
the opposition, I'm not sure how that goes, but we'd have to get clarification from the county clerk.
Well, years ago, there was a law passed in the state that requires the committee to determine the language that goes on the ballot for and against these, that they'd be
Yeah, it's on
independent
any of the
committees.
ballot initiatives.
Yes,
They
that's
have to have
on all of the initiatives. So it would be good if you would let people know as to those that would like to participate on that.
Okay.
And if it's the county clerk, I can check with her on that. And I appreciate it. I appreciate your discussion here tonight. I knew before I spoke that this was not going to, unless we have a decrease in property values, increase the property rates. So I was aware of that when I spoke, and I wanted you to know that I was totally aware of that. And thank you for
Yeah.
your time. I appreciate your discussion.
Okay.
Can I address that?
Uh,
The repaying that bond, the way it's structured, the 50 cents is projected what it will collect yearly. And part of that will go into a fund that, and I believe it's 5 years or 6 years, will build up enough to repay 1 year's worth of the bond payment. And that'll be set aside so that we've got that in case projections don't come in as high as in case property values decrease. There'll be a fund that is set aside when repaying it, that there's excess there that goes into that to kind of as an insurance cushion.
Be good to clarify that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I just wanted to say real quick, Luke, your whole thing with the goals, I think that's fabulous. And I think with the superintendent search, that would also really help with maybe some of your verbiage with the application or putting the job feelers out there, because Elko is a special place. Elko County is a special place. And we need someone here who shares the same values as the vast majority of the population here. And I think that would probably help in that. The pay as you go thing, I honestly can't remember how I voted on that, but I really feel like, touching on what Janine said, the verbiage definitely should have been better, because I'm so disappointed that didn't pass now. And I wish I could remember what I did on that one. And just to close what I was saying early with the CRT thing, all it's doing is pitting the races against each other. Anytime we have to specifically determine a person's value and opinion solely based off of their race or their skin color, that's called racism. You can change the name to multicultural teaching and learning for justice and urban teaching and whatever you want to call it, but it's all still the same thing. It's the same end result. And this woke kindergartners and everything, the beauty about little kids is they don't even see any of that. All they see are people. So why in the world we would be trying to integrate that into their little brains that don't even care? And that's how everyone should be. Nobody should care. Nobody should care. We're all just people. We're all just Americans. And that's how it's supposed to be. And this is a divisive and hurtful literature. And it is literature. There are actual textbooks that are in that email with links. You're going to see them all. They're blue and then they're red. There's many, many, many of them. and a lot of references, and it's really disturbing. So I really would encourage you guys to take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn Hoffman, and I wasn't going to speak either, but I just want to thank every one of you for the way you ran the meeting and the way you acted during the meeting tonight and how you answered all these people's questions. And I feel so happy to be here, to be part of Elko County. And I know all of us care about kids. We care about our families, and we all acted like adults tonight and communicated really well with each other. So thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Yes, ma'am.
On the bond, the 150 million, everything implodes and nothing.
Could you
Come up and give your
come
name
up
and ask your question.
yeah, ask your question and they,
Kimberly Starr, if everything implodes, as could very well happen, are we on the hook for that 150 million forever? Or does it just disappear if we don't use it? Is it just a fund that we can tap into?
Can I answer that?
Those,
As what he was saying, we have 6 years to use that bond authorization. It's a bond authorization. We're projecting $150 million.
Right.
If, say, it passes in November and January, we have the need to change those, say the trailers in Flagview. That costs 40 million. We'll request a bond, 40 million. We'll begin construction straight away.
But there's no
And then-
legality that says, no, you're going to use the whole 150
No, if
million.
we only use 110, we use 110. If we use 20 million, we use 20 million.
okay?
Tammy Dickinson, you all know me. I just wanted to stand up and say thank you to Dr. Michelle Robinson. Teresa, you put it so perfectly. We asked her to do the impossible, and then we gave her no resources to do it and very little board support to do it, honestly. It was disappointing to be on this side and watch these meetings and watch her flail while you guys let her. It was tough. I'm not sure Elko County will ever be able to recruit somebody of that caliber ever again. I wish the public realized. I know I extensively advertised the interviews and asked for feedback from everyone. And the feedback we got, the very little feedback I got from the public was so overwhelmingly positive for Dr. Robinson, because we could sense she was capable and she was going to make the changes we needed to have made so that we stopped being at the bottom and we started being at the top. We had made those goals. Luke, you weren't on the board at the time. We'd made a vision statement. We'd outlined the things that we had hoped to accomplish. She was going to be able to do that for us. She really was. She's incredibly qualified. She loved this community. It's hard to come from somewhere else. It's hard to come from Vegas. I think, Robert, you're from Vegas. But she came with an open heart and an open mind, and then got slammed left and right. And that was so disappointing. She did a wonderful job. And I just want to publicly say, thank you, Dr. Michelle Robinson. Thank you for coming and giving us a year of your time. And I'm sorry that we didn't utilize you in the way that we should have. And I'm sorry to the kids of Elko County that we didn't utilize you in the way that we should have. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming.